Hi, I'm Ash. Having come from a military background, I've always had a passion for military history. In today's episode, we're going to look at the Pelican of London and compare it to the HMS Beagle, the ship that Charles Darwin sailed on for 5 years as part of the circumnavigation of the world. The Pelican of London is a 3-masted steel-hulled vessel that is 44 metres long. The HMS Beagle, however, was smaller. It was just 28 metres long and was made entirely of wood, with a copper plating for the hull. Despite these differences in size, whilst the Pelican of London had a crew of 40, the HMS Beagle had a much larger crew at 68. Living quarters on board the Pelican are pretty good. We have single beds, electricity and ample storage space for our needs. The crew of the Beagle, however, did not enjoy such luxury. They would have had to sling their hammocks in a very crowded room. Moreover, the Royal Navy at this time operated a 4 hours on, 4 hours off watch system between 2 watches. This meant that whilst at sea, sailors would only get a few hours of sleep in one go. However, fortunately, on board the Pelican, we have a lot more time in between each shift because we're split into 3 watches. On board the Pelican, we have modern flushing toilets known as heads. However, the heads on the HMS Beagle were holes in the front of the ship. The facilities also came with a communal rope with a piece of rag attached to it. This rag would then be lowered into the water and raised every time a sailor needed to clean up, having done their business. On board the Pelican, we have a variety of fresh and chilled food. The crew of the Beagle, however, did not have such luxuries. They would have had to dry their food. For instance, whilst meat was available, it was far from fresh. In order to preserve meat for several months on end, it would have been heavily salted and stored in barrels. To make the meat edible, it was then soaked in fresh water for several hours, with the water regularly changed. Even when cooked, the meat was hard and typically served with hardtack, also known as ship's biscuit, which is so hard the sailors would have to soak it before eating, often in their stews or the juices of their meat. Fresh water was very scarce. As a result, it was mostly only used for food preparation and drinking. Stored fresh water often developed algae and went foul. As a result, the Royal Navy issued sailors with a low alcohol beer known as small beer. This was often served with a daily alcohol ration of grog known as the tot. This also served to boost morale. Although it wasn't amazing, the sailors of the Beagle enjoyed a high protein diet of over 5,000 calories a day, which is much better than anything their working class counterparts got on land. Citrus would also be included in their diet to combat scurvy. This is the Pelican's wheelhouse. Here we have a number of modern equipment such as the echo sounder, the radar and the GPS, which we use to navigate. Now, the interesting thing to note here is that if you give these charts and chart equipment to a 19th century Royal Naval officer such as Captain Fitzroy of HMS Beagle, he will know exactly how to use them, because in terms of format, not much has changed. Using these charts, an accurate clock known as a chronometer, and a sextant such as this one, the Beagle's officers would have been able to navigate across the world. Navigation back then was hard work. Officers would spend hours every day making numerous observations and calculations in order to ascertain the ship's position. Sometimes, during periods of bad weather, the ship's position would not be known for days. Other times, the Beagle wouldn't even have charts, because they were the ones making them in the first place. Although the Pelican is a sailing vessel, we do have a 300 horsepower engine, which comes in useful when we are sailing through a narrow channel, coming to port, or if the winds are simply not in our favour. HMS Beagle, of course, didn't have an engine, which is why the ship often had to anchor off the coast and use rowing boats to go ashore. If needed, the boats would be used to tow the ship into port. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed getting a little bit of an insight on what life was like on HMS Beagle and what life is like today on board the Pelican.